Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/AITA. In today's episode, AITA for giving a mother with a crying baby my seat near my wife to teach her a lesson? AITA for calling my girlfriend selfish for being upset I wasn't at the birth of our kid because I was also in hospital? AWTA for telling our nephew why my wife isn't that close to him, knowing very well it would make him hate his mother, which did happen. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. AITA for giving a mother with a crying baby my seat near my wife to teach her a lesson? So my wife and I recently went on a trip together paid for by her dad. He flew us to Hawaii with first-class seats. We had a great time. My wife is used to travel while I'm less experienced with plane travel. This was the first time I flew first class. On our way back home, we were sat near the back where by the border between us and the undesirables. A mother and her baby were one of the first to board and the poor baby was not having a good time. I felt even worse got the mother as I know she's probably equally distressed about the baby crying. While I felt sympathy, my wife was mad. She kept making comments about how our flight was going to be miserable as the best. Her completing went on for the longest time. She kept saying that the mother was irresponsible and if she doesn't know how to calm her baby, she shouldn't be taking it on a plane. I tried to tell her to calm down as it's not that serious, but she wasn't having it. Eventually, I got tired of that, so I offered to go speak to the mom for my wife. She said she would be happy if I did. I went back in between boarding groups and told the mother that if she wanted, I would give her my first-class seat so she can kick her feet up and that may be more comfortable for her and the baby. She didn't want to initially, but I insisted and her husband encouraged her to take it. She took her baby up to first class and I got series of angry texts from my wife. So I felt like this was not a huge deal as my wife brought noise-canceling headphones. And the other people in first class most likely do as well. And if they don't, they have normal headphones and can simply block out the baby. It's 2023, not 1990. We're not living in the Stone Age. The baby cried for maybe a cumulative 30 minutes on an 8-hour flight. So barely at all. When my wife and I met up, she was livid. She told me that I ruined her flight and ruined the end of the trip for her. I told her that she's overreacting to something that's only mildly annoying. She has refused to drop this. AITA? LOL, teach your wife a lesson. Don't stay married to her if you need to do petty things. At least they can save money in the future not getting a first-class ticket for you. Don't stay married to her if you need to do petty things. /thread. Also, he's the to the entire first class when he knowingly brought a screaming baby into their section. Asterisk, please note, yes, babies are permitted in first class, but when the baby isn't in first class, and you bring it in first class while it's screaming, to teach your wife a lesson, you are an to that entire section of the plane. Just like he'd be the if the baby was in first class and he paid her $100 to sit in economy. YTA. Teach her a lesson is such a childish toxic trait. If you have something that's bothering you, then you should talk about it, resolve it right away. There's no need for this passive kind of behavior. YTA for weaponizing your wife's comments against her, and for treating her like a child who needed to be taught a lesson. She's your partner who wanted to enjoy a vacation with you, and you ditched her at the finish line. Who does that? YTA. Why isn't a woman allowed to complain to a husband about a crying baby? Why does that make her the She didn't confront the woman, make loud comments so the woman could hear, she didn't make a scene. She had a whinge/moan to her spouse. Instead, you decided to punish your wife. You were on a free trip paid for by her father and decided you need to be a petty bastard. I wouldn't invite you on the next trip. You're definitely the for feeling like you need to punish your wife. Can I get Things that didn't happen for 100 Alex? ESH. Your wife for being rude and lacking empathy. You for feeling as though you had a right to punish her for her behavior. And for using other human beings to inflict that punishment. They had to sit through several hours of a flight next to a person who openly didn't want to be in their presence. This is the only response that makes sense here. The complaining is a bit childish, but teaching your wife a lesson, what are you, her dad? In all fairness, everyone on every flight is pretty open about not wanting to be sitting next to someone else. I think it was nice of him to offer to the lady, though. Truly. She will always remember that kind person. Let's hope the wife doesn't have a big-ass karma sandwich coming her way if she ever has kids. AITA for calling my girlfriend selfish for being upset I wasn't at the birth of our kid because I was also in hospital? My girlfriend and I, both 26F, have a son who is just over a year old. And there was some major drama during the birth. For some context, I have chronic heart problems and have been struggling with it since birth. I had a surgery when I was an infant, another at 7 and another at 15. I haven't needed one since and have been doing well all around. When my girlfriend was 6 months pregnant, I got really ill and it took a massive toll on my lungs and heart. I pulled through but spent about a month in the hospital. I felt so awful that I couldn't be with my girlfriend, Jane, but she was super great with it. Then, 2 days before the due date, I was rushed into the hospital due to a buildup of fluid around my heart. I had to get the fluid removed ASAP. When the fluid was all out, my BIL came to visit me and he told me Jane had given birth. I was both ecstatic and devastated. I had to spend the night under supervision, but as soon as I was allowed to leave, I went to the maternity wing to see my girlfriend and baby. At the time, all negative emotions were smothered by our bundle of joy, but over the months, Jane has been showing more and more signs of resentment towards me. It came to a head last night during our date night. I had the whole day planned. Baby had gone to grandma's, her favorite takeout, got all her favorite movies ready to play, spa evening planned, etc. But she wasn't feeling any of it. I asked her what was wrong and she said she's angry at me for missing the birth. I'll admit, I didn't handle it as best as I wanted to, but we argued for a bit and I ended up calling her selfish for saying that. I asked her if she understood the severity of the situation and that I was very ill. She got up and said she wasn't going to let me patronize her and that she's never been disrespected like that before and that she's going to bed. AITA? NTA. Does your GF wants you to die in order for her to have the perfect moment to tell her kid? You should have handled it more diplomatically, but doesn't seem you're an AH. Him dying in the delivery room, smiling sweetly as he held his baby, knowing he would live in through this sweet, perfect child, you have to admit, it's so romantic. Your girlfriend needs to understand that your condition will kill you should you not attend to it. Is she going to punish you forever for that as if you had control over it in the first place? NTA. My boyfriend passed away due to acute coronary syndrome. You never ever think twice over the medical attention your heart needs even at times like this. NTA, but I'm gonna go with that's not what she's upset about. I believe something else is stuck in her crawl and she's using this issue as a stand-in for talking about the real issue. Like, are you live long enough to see this child raised? How many important events will be missed because of your health? Will she end up being a caregiver for you while attempting to raise the child all on her own? Will she one day be standing at your graveside with toddler on her hip, crying her eyes out over you? Should she think about leaving you to find someone more likely to be there for her and the baby long term? Would it hurt more to rip the bandage off quickly or watch you slowly deteriorate and pass? Before people lose their freaking minds on me, let me just say that all those questions are super shitty to ask the OP because he has no control over his body or the direction his medical issues take in the future. The GF knows this and that's why she isn't bringing up any of the hard questions. Instead, she's just letting the fact that OP missed the birth eat away at her day after day. The only path I see moving forward is to broach those hard subjects and talk them out. Be empathic and expect empathy in return. Help her see that the future is not guaranteed, no matter who you're with. Is she serious? What were you supposed to do? NTA. NAH. Honestly, it sounds to me like she may be experiencing postpartum depression. Giving birth is incredibly stressful and frankly traumatic, even under the best of circumstances. It genuinely sounds as though the trauma of giving birth while you were going through emergency surgery may have dealt a rather significant hit on her mental health. Can you imagine how terrifying that would be? You're giving birth for the first time, and you go into labor right after your husband, your anchor that you're counting on to be there to support you through this terrifying ordeal, has been admitted for emergency surgery on his heart? She must have felt so scared and alone. Obviously, it is not your fault that you were not able to be there, and I can imagine it also took a toll on you to miss the birth of your child. However, it genuinely seems as though she is struggling, and that she is latching onto that one traumatic event as the cause. Please try to get your wife some help from a professional who specializes in postpartum depression and trauma, because if that is what this is, it most likely won't self-resolve. NTA. It's fine to be hurt, but to hold that resentment against you is just really spiteful. It is not your fault you missed the birth. Unfortunate situation, but your health matters too. NTA. Jane is acting like you wanted to miss the birth of your child. I'm assuming if you didn't get the fluid out ASAP, you could have died. Sure, you won't get that moment, but it couldn't be helped. Being upset? Sure. Holding resentment for something out of your control and could have took your life? That is wrong of your girlfriend OP. AITA, AWTA, for telling our nephew why my wife isn't that close to him, knowing very well it would make him hate his mother, which did happen. Name change for privacy. When my wife, 40, was 17, she and her dad got in a traumatic accident which ended up fatally injuring her father and severely injuring her. I can't share everything, but it ended up causing her going into a coma for a few years. She has completely, as far as she can according to the doctor, healed from the physical injuries, but we are still working on the mental aspect because it is very bad. My wife has a sister Regina, 45, and a brother Calvin, 47. Regina had a son 2 years after my wife woke up from a coma and decided to name him James, the name of my late Fael. All of us, me, Emael, her ILs, Calvin and her husband Will, tried to make her change the name, because we all knew it wouldn't end well. She didn't listen to us and decided to go ahead with the name. The end result was not pretty. We now have 6 other nephews and nieces, and while my wife is very close with all of them, she isn't that close with James. He is 18 now. He has noticed this a lot, and finally he asked me and Will the real reason why my wife isn't as close with him. We gave him a watered-down version. We told him the reason why, and he was horrified. It ended up having a full blow up at their house, and now James is staying with my MIL. Regina is upset I painted her as the villain, and after discussing what happened with my friends, a lot of them think I shouldn't have told him the truth. So I want to know AITA? Forgot to add FIL had a very unique and unusual name by the standards of my country. I have yet to meet another person other than James with the same name as him. My wife didn't treat him as a pariah, just bit more closed off to him than others. She didn't babysit him as often, she didn't take him on fun stuff alone as often. He would get 1 to 2 a month alone, while my other nephew got 2 to 3 times. Other than that, they have good relationships. She might not talk to him on bad days, but she does that to Calvin too because he looks so much like Fael. People, I'm asking if I shouldn't have told my nephew the truth. I know where my wife stands in part of the conflict, so I don't need any judgments on her. The reason my nephew was given by Regina is that my wife isn't as close to him because he was born so soon after the accident and that they didn't bond. So it's your sister-in-law's fault for naming her son after her late father, an incredibly common thing, no matter how tragic the death, that your wife chose not to get close to her nephew? For 18 years, he had to watch his aunt choose his other cousins over him, and when he finally had the courage to ask why, his reaction to the answer was to abandon his mother? That doesn't track. I feel like OP is going to bust out some completely relevant piece of information about their deceased FIL once all the YTAs pour in and just make this entire post messy. YTA. The real reason? What does that even mean? That his grandfather passed away in a tragic car accident that also hurt your wife. So his mother decided to honor her father and name James after him? None of that is scarring and only paints your wife in a bad light. Your SIL is no villain for naming her son after her father. Like WTF? Real reason was wife is an asshole. I don't think the wife is the AH for trauma responses. Her reaction isn't great, but it's understandable. Am I right in understanding that your wife has treated this one nephew as a pariah because her sister named him after their late father? If so, YTA, or more accurately, your wife is TA. The kid didn't get to choose his name, he at least deserved to be treated as a member of the family. I understand why your wife has a problem with the name, no doubt, and I completely see why she takes issue with her sister over it, but taking it out on the innocent party is the absolute wrong thing to do. I think you're missing the point here. You can argue to the ends of the earth whether or not the wife is an odd for treating her nephew this way, but the question is, was it right to tell him? And I think yes. The kid is 18 and deserved to know, even if the reason is shitty. YTA, your wife is, and you're the AH for telling James this. So this child was named after his grandfather who died tragically. That seems like a lovely way to honor his memory, and something very common that people do. Why are you punishing this kid by treating him differently? So, Regina lost her dad. She grieved. She went through all those unpleasant feelings. So remind me again why she couldn't name her son after her dad? I don't think he is TA. The child is 18 years old, it is allowed to know about the name and the reason. And it seems like it wasn't much of a honor of the memory if Noon told him before. But yes, it is soft YTA for the wife who was distant to her nephew just because of a name. YTA. Your wife's mental health isn't her fault but is her responsibility. From your post, she has been using her mental health as an excuse to irrationally exclude and punish your nephew because of his name. This is a classic case of people tiptoeing around mental health rather than facing it properly. I can appreciate it may have been difficult after waking up from the coma and during the nephew's early years when getting used to it, but for this behavior to still be happening 18 years later is absurd. Your wife is an adult punishing a child for no reason. The entire family is giving credence to your wife's irrational thoughts, which is making it all worse. And you have explained it in a way to your nephew which does make his mother out to be a villain. Apparently, the sister is the only one of you capable of applying objective and rational thought. Your wife's behavior is hers to control, not her sister's. Edit, OP, your edit makes the situation worse, not better. What Yunare is saying is the treatment of your nephew has been subtly worse for 18 years, which has meant he has questioned why for 18 years without anything definitive to be able to ask the question of why, and when he did it turns out he wasn't crazy and you were treating him different, and then you blamed this young person's treatment on his mother for some reason. I'm so confused. If your goal was to force me to read this 3x, congratulations. Why is naming him James a big deal? Is that the dead father's name? Was this a gross negligence accident and we hate the corpse? Having read OP's edits to the main post, YTA. OP, the fact your wife was recovering from a 3-year-long coma for the 10-ish years of his life is as much of a contributing factor to her relationship with James as his name. She was bedridden in the hospital for years, then struggled with her mental health, which I doubt would have massively changed had James not been called James. How many other nephews and nieces did she bond with during those 10 years? Is she close to another nephew the exact same age as James? By saying the issue is only his name, you are squarely placing the blame on his mother, who you clearly dislike. It's vindictive and also dishonest and doing no favors to anyone. That the name is a factor? Sure. That it's the only reason? Nope. YTA. INFO. What exactly do you mean by the end result was not pretty? Did naming her son James massively hinder your wife's progress? Or did your wife decide to take out her trauma on James? Did you know that it would be terrible? Or was everyone being overprotective of your wife? Saya lost her father under truly tragic circumstances and nearly lost her sister. I can't blame her for desperately wanting to honor him with her son's name. For me, this all kinda depends how bad the fallout was, how long it lasted, and just how much Sayal knew before choosing the name. Like your wife can't hide from the name James her whole life. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.